What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. Alright, RobCore, we're here. We're finally here at the end of Injustice Year 1. It's been a fun road, and it only gets better. Oh my god, I haven't even started Year 2 yet. This is just like the end of Year 1. And the way that Tom Taylor does this is so cool. Okay, so in the last video, we had talked about how Superman's reign, Superman's desire to, I guess, like impose peace on the world, with a gun pointing to everybody's heads, was really kind of like postponed for a second with the arrival of Darkseid. Darkseid and his forces of Apocalypse had launched an invasion of planet Earth. But we had talked about how this was Tom Taylor basically saying that it was Superman crossing a line. Up to that point in DC Comics, and really even now to a degree with the traditional Superman in DC Comics, it's never about fighting to the point that you kill people. It's just fighting them to keep yourself safe. It's the simple premise of self-defense, understanding yourself, learning what you're about, learning your limits, knowing where you stand, but also valuing the sanctity of life. Fight someone long enough not to defeat them, but to keep them from hurting you. When it comes to the character of Superman in Injustice, it's not that way. He had walked the traditional line of Superman as we knew him, that following the death of Lois Lane, following the death of his unborn child, following the destruction of Metropolis, he had basically taken the world by storm. He had said, we're going to impose peace. We are going to have peace, whether people want it or not. The other half of this is that he ran into an issue where it was a matter of imposing the peace. Now, with regards to Lex Luthor, because it seems as though he's basically a friend of Superman, the two of them began working together for a multifaceted attempt to basically have a police force, because Superman sat down and said, okay, the Justice League is not large enough to police the world. There's billions of people in the world. There are 7 or 8 members of the Justice League. There's just not enough. What they need is the ability to let the world police itself. But what they need to do is ensure that the people who are policing the world are on their side. Now, this came by way, or I guess this really comes out of 2 fronts. The first is the world's reaction to Superman from the actions of Darkseid. The second is going to be by way of creating a pill, really, basically giving people the ability to have superpowers. But as we jump into this, is Superman and it's Bruce Wayne sitting down and really having these opposing views, but also similar views at the same time. Of course, Wonder Woman says, you saved so many lives, because remember, Wonder Woman is always the character that keeps pushing Superman down this road. When someone comes along and says, Superman, you have to stop, Wonder Woman is the person that pushes Superman past that individual and keeps him on this road of self-destruction. It's always been that way with her character in alternate reality stories, but it works because on the other end, when we get to the main DC continuity, Wonder Woman's always the supporting character. She's always the one pushing him up, helping him move to greater heights. Lois Lane does the same thing, but when it comes to fighting villains, she's always the one to grab his hand and say, no, do not cross that line, don't kill, we don't do that. I'm in your corner no matter what happens, but we can't do that. With Batman in this story in Injustice, he takes the stance that Wonder Woman would normally take, where he says, Superman took so many lives, he killed so many people. Now, a very important thing to differentiate here is the lives of criminals versus the lives of good guys. And it's kind of a cool situation, because when it comes to Batman, it's a life is a life. All lives are valuable, all lives have sanctity, but then it creates a contradiction in and of itself. If all life is sacred, then Hitler's life was sacred. Hitler shouldn't have been killed, or shouldn't have committed suicide. Hitler was just a sacred person. Either all life is sacred or no life is sacred. You can't choose. That's the problem with stances like that, is the line drawing. If you say that all life is valuable, then are there exceptions? And if there are exceptions, who gets to decide what those exceptions are? And so it's really Superman just kind of making a decision and running with it, and it's having repercussions accordingly. Now, the other half of this is we basically have Bruce Wayne revealing his identity to his Justice League. And the reason why is because of the fact that, Huntress knows his whole backstory. I mean, she knows everything that's going on with the realm of Bruce Wayne as Batman, but no one else did. Well, at least Black Canary did, but nobody else did. And when it comes to Bruce Wayne, when it comes to him, debating with a lot of members of his Justice League, Huntress comes out and refers to him as Bruce. Well, then it's basically outing his identity. But not only that, Batman holds on to it. He's like, they don't need to know what my identity is. I don't need to tell them what it is. Superman's gonna make a personal army. You guys just need to trust me. Well, the issue is that Batman hasn't earned anybody's trust. Despite the fact that he's formed his own Justice League, despite the fact that he sat down and said, our mission needs to be the defeat of Superman, no one really knows anything about him. He's still very enigmatic. And so because of this, he does exactly what he needs to do, and and he reveals his identity to everybody there. He says, everybody's basically learning that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Now, it's kind of funny. Oliver Queen's reaction is pretty cool too. Holy crap, because it's like, whoever would have thought that like the billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne is Batman, like one of the smartest, most capable superheroes in the entirety of the DC universe. Now from here, the entire meeting is basically interrupted by, a breaking news story. And what we learn is that following Superman saving the world, that a cult of Superman supporters has shown up here, and they are basically doing what they believe Superman's doing and just getting rid of individuals who are deemed to be undesirables. Now, Tom Taylor grabbing this is not an accident. Tom Taylor is not doing this arbitrarily. He's not doing it because it just makes sense. He's actually drawing on a previously existing story. Back after the death of Hal Jordan in the main DC universe, following the events of Emerald Twilight and all that kind of good stuff, 0 Hour Crisis in Time, and Kyle Rayner becoming the new Green Lantern, in the events that led up to Kyle Rayner recreating Oa, bringing back the Guardians of the Universe, and setting the stage for Jeff Johns being able to launch Green Lantern Rebirth, one of the things that had happened is Kyle Rayner had gained the power of Ion. Basically, he became what Hal Jordan would have been if he hadn't become Parallax. If he hadn't become a bad guy, he would have basically become God. That's what Kyle Rayner did. That's how he brought back Oa and brought back the Guardians of the Universe and stuff. But while Kyle Rayner was able to be everywhere at once, he was able to be in multiple places on Earth, in different parts of the universe, all at the same time, effectively saving it with this extraordinary power. He sat down and talked to Superman, and Superman said, you cannot have power like this. And the reason why is because what will start out as adoration, what will start as admiration, will turn into worship. Now, of course, Kyle Rayner had responded by saying, yeah, but I mean, you and Wonder Woman and people, you have people that worship you. And Superman responded by saying, yeah, but we've been around for years. You've been around for 5 days, and people are already forming cults around you. I mean, that was the main DC timeline. In this Injustice story, it's Tom Taylor grabbing that concept and applying it to Superman. But there's no one here to tell Superman, you shouldn't have this kind of power. There's no one here to tell Superman, you shouldn't have these insane abilities, because everybody that's standing against him is considered to be an enemy of humanity. Batman's an enemy of humanity. Catwoman's an enemy of humanity for the simple fact that Superman's trying to impose world peace, and he's painting the picture that they're just getting in the way. And so with regards to these cultists, of course, you have Batman's team that show up, and they essentially start taking them out. I mean, it's really not much of a contest here. It's just normal human beings dressed in crazy get-ups. But then we also have a confrontation between Superman and Batman. Now, it's not really a fight so much as it's kind of like a disagreement, but this is Tom Taylor basically widening the rift, saying we're reaching this point where we're going to see a fight between Batman and Superman, because now they're just at this point where they just can't come back. They just don't seem to be able to mend the rift between the two of them, and things are never going to be the same. Now, with regards to the character of Lex Luthor, again, he appears to be a friend of Superman with regards to this Injustice story. We pick up with him in the Fortress of Solitude. And again, with Lex Luthor being the smartest man on Earth, he's taking out the other half of this situation, where Lex Luthor predicted that cultists, different people like that would rise up in support of Superman's cause, that those cultists are cool, but what they don't need are individuals who can easily, be defeated by Batman and his forces and can easily just be tossed into a jail. Hell, they can be taken down by cops. What they need are people who are basically metahumans, who will have extraordinary abilities and will rally to Superman's cause. And so what Lex Luthor's been working on is creating a pill that will give individuals superpowers, for all intents and purposes, powers that are close to or near on par with Superman's abilities. Now, the other half of this is that Superman's parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, have been brought to the Fortress of Solitude. Remember, when Superman first rose to power, the US government panicked. The United States government panicked, and the president ordered that Superman's parents be kidnapped for the purpose of using them as hostages and forcing Superman to stand down. Now, of course, Superman, he retrieved his parents quick, fast, and in a hurry. But the fact remains here that the discussion between Lex Luthor and Superman's parents is the situation where Martha's basically saying Superman is a scared child right now. She uses the analogy of a blanket that Superman had when he was a kid. He took that blanket everywhere with him. He took it everywhere he went. He played with it, he slept with it, the whole 9 yards. But one day when it went missing, he freaked out, threw a tantrum, and knocked over a tractor, and that was when they learned what it was that he was capable of doing. And what's happening here is Tom Taylor is throwing in this quintessential parental advice. It's parents looking at their child from the perspective of parents. And that's what makes him so cool here, is Jonathan and Martha Kent don't look at Superman as this godly being from outer space. They recognize that's what he is, but they look at him as a child, as their son. They look at him as, this is a man that lost the two most important things in his life, his wife and his unborn child, and he's throwing what amounts to a giant temper tantrum. He's scared that he'll lose all the other things that are close to him. And so in response to this, Lex Luthor's kind of faced with this quagmire where it's this idea that he has to walk this road. Is he going to stay on the path of Superman? And how far does this road lead? Is there a point where Superman will stop? Will Superman get halfway down this road and then say, okay, we've done enough. The world is safe now. We've gotten rid of all the villains. Or is it going to be a Red Sun-esque situation where not only does he conquer conquer the world, he puts mind control devices on anybody that doesn't agree with him. How far does this go? And Lex Luthor, as the smartest man in the world, sees what's on the horizon. He sees where this is going. He sees, absolute totalitarian domination of the planet Earth by Superman and the Justice League. And the father of Superman, Jonathan Kent, sees the exact same thing and says, if you're making these pills, do not tell me that it hasn't crossed your mind that you're going to give these pills out to other people that will work against Superman, because in truth, that's the only way to bring him down. Now, something that I also want to draw your attention to is a chess match between Superman and the Flash, Barry Allen. This is such an important moment because this is Tom Taylor playing it fast and loose with the idea of arguments. Who comes out on top here? Keep in mind, this is this is an astronomically fast chess match. Games are being completed in the span it takes to complete a sentence. That's how fast they're playing these matches. But Superman and Barry Allen are having this conversation really about philosophy, how far Superman wants to take this. Superman initially says, I want to get rid of guns. I want to remove guns from the face of the planet, but I want to know how you feel about this. And the reason why is because Superman respects the Flash, but the Flash also has some measure of loyalty to Superman. Now, he's kind of like the wild card here. He could go either way. His loyalties are being tested. Seeing Superman and Wonder Woman pummel a kid who was an admirer of the superhero community and stood up to them in their rise to power is something that left Barry Allen with a question of whether or not Superman's doing the right thing. At the same time, Flash also realizes that the reason why the Joker was able to kill Lois Lane was because Batman never killed the Joker. Because Batman would catch the Joker would go to Arkham Asylum, he would escape, and the cycle would continue. It was only a matter of time before something like this happened. As a scientist, Barry Allen sits down and says, what's the most logical road to take here? Now, the issue here is that as Superman begins to say, we should get rid of guns because people will use guns and they will kill each other, Barry Allen says, yes, you're right, we should do that. And then we should get rid of cigarettes. If we get rid of cigarettes, well, cigarettes kill people, but they smoke them knowing they're gonna die, so let's take away cigarettes. And the cool thing about this is that the direction that the games take are directly reflective of who's in the argument. Superman makes a good point, he wins the match, checkmate. But Barry Allen starts to crush the argument of Superman, and he just keeps winning game after game after game. He's saying, well, if what we're gonna do is we're going to say, you should not do that because it's bad for your health, because it's going to kill you, then where do you stop? You take away cigarettes, then you take away cars, then you take away anybody who doesn't recycle because it's polluting the environment, so on and so forth. It's just this constant thing where it's always one thing after another, and it's always taking the next step in the name of preserving life. And so what's happening is Barry Allen's basically making the case that if you start down this road, all you're going to do is continue to imprison people for doing what it is that you don't think that they should do. It's not a matter of what's right or wrong, it's a matter of what you think should or should not be done. Now, picking up from here, we join Lex Luthor with the finishing of this pill, of course, where he presents it to the Justice League and says, this is what I've been working on. This is what Superman and I have been working on. We have been working on a pill that will give individuals powers. Now, of course, the first question coming out of the Justice League is, well, what happens if the wrong people get a hold of this? Now, this is kind of a multifaceted question. Some people in the Justice League are asking this question because they legitimately want to make sure that, like, Captain Boomerang does not get a hold of a pill that could give him powers equal to Superman. Other people are asking this because they want to make sure no one can question their rule. But the person watching all this unfold is, again, Hawkgirl. Now, at this point, keep in mind, we don't know who Hawkgirl is. All we know is that the actual Hawkgirl was basically kidnapped by Batman and replaced with a doppelganger. But at the moment, we're not sure exactly what's going on. Instead, we pick up with Damian Wayne later on that night, and Damian Wayne essentially teleports to the Batcave. Now, this is a beautiful moment between a father and a son. I mean, literally, a father and his biological son. Remember, Damian Wayne threw a baton at the head of Dick Grayson, knocked him over, his neck hit a rock, and Dick Grayson died. Because of this, Damian Wayne is just like Bruce Wayne. He doesn't let people know that he's grieving. He just keeps it all inside, he bottles it all in, and he just kind of goes about his life as normal. Batman's the exact same way. With Damian Wayne arriving here, Batman's initially ready to dismiss his son, and Alfred is the voice of reason. He says, look, you can't do this. You guys need to mend the rift between the two of you. If that means you guys get into a fist fight to work out your anger, then get into a damn fist fight, work out your anger, and go forward as father and son. Hell's bells. Solve your problems and be a family. Be what's left of the Bat family. But in the end, they're both so frustrated with each other. With Batman, it's the idea that Damian Wayne basically cost the life of Dick Grayson. And whether or not Damian Wayne chooses to look at it that way, for all intents and purposes, Dick Grayson was the first son of Batman. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it always will be. It wasn't until later on that Damian Wayne was discovered, but for years and years and years and years, Dick Grayson was the son of Bruce Wayne. He adopted him, trained him, taught him everything that he knew. Dick Grayson was this shining light in the life of Bruce Wayne, and then it all came crashing down because Damian Damian Wayne got him killed. On the other half of the equation, Damian Wayne looks at Bruce Wayne and says, this is all just some stupid crusade that you had. Your parents died when you were a kid and you just couldn't get over it. You just couldn't let it go. Instead, you decided to dress as a crazy asshole being a bat, run around in the middle of the night, fight criminals, and in your attempt to have some grandiose moral compass, the same criminals get out over and over and over again. He says, that's why I sided with Superman, because in your arrogance and your hubris, thinking you could fix the world with your own moral viewpoint, that it was inevitable something like this would happen. That even if Batman did not kill Lois Lane, he might as well have put the gun to her head and pulled the trigger, because his actions led to her death in the first place. Now keep in mind, these guys are all speaking out of anger. You know, they're all speaking out of rage, they're speaking out of irritation, but the fact remains, in the middle of this fight, we suddenly have Hawkgirl arrive here. Now, of course, Hawkgirl pulls this giant penny off of Bruce Wayne, after this fight between Bruce and Damian, and then this is when Damian starts to realize what's going on. In the middle of this conversation, what he says is, how did you get here? How did you even know I was here? How did you know where the Batcave is? No one knows where the Batcave is. The Batcave is a place that cannot be found except by those who already know where it is, to quote Pirates of the Caribbean. And so because of that, he comes to the realization that he knows who Hawkgirl is. He says, Hawkgirl's strong, but she's not that strong. And he figures out that Hawkgirl's actually Martian Manhunter. Now, what a reveal! What a reveal! I mean, Martian Manhunter, I was like, oh my God, this is insane, because it was so cool to see his character pop up in the story. But following this, of course, in the panic and the chaos, Damian Wayne takes off back to the Watchtower and tells the Justice League what's going on. Now, this is huge, because this is Damian Wayne really being a spy for Superman and his ilk, because of the fact that Damian Wayne knows so much about Batman in terms of what his strategies would be, how he would function, but he doesn't know his father on a personal level. And he even goes as far as to say that. He says, this is what my father does. He's got information on all of you, and he will use every ounce of that information that he needs if he believes that it will bring you down. He would kidnap their families. He would kidnap their friends. He would just throw them into a black bag. They disappear off the face of the planet if it meant that he could use them as leverage to take these guys down. And so in response, Superman says, okay, well, if that's how Batman wants to be, I can be the exact same way. And so he jumps on the communication systems of the Justice League Watchtower, broadcasts to the world, and is preparing to reveal Batman's identity when Bruce Wayne activates Protocol Icarus, shuts down all communications to the Justice League Watchtower, the signal's lost in its entirety in an effort to basically keep himself safe. Now from here, Damian Wayne, looks to both Cyborg and Lex Luthor and says, look, Lex, you're the smartest man in the world. Cyborg's a living computer. If you want to get Batman's identity out there, then surely both of you know how to do it. And that's exactly what they do. They send what amounts to an email out to the world saying, Bruce Wayne is Batman. And because of this, Batman's ousted now. Everyone knows who Batman is. Now, the funny thing about this is Tom Taylor really just kind of relies on us to assume how it would be taken. I mean, it's kind of like, would people believe it? Would they not believe it? I mean, Bruce Wayne's a billionaire playboy. The guy's a finance geek, to quote the Dark Knight. But the fact remains that the question is out there. The name is out there. People want to know what's going on. People want to know if that's true. And so what we do here is we pick up really with a confrontation between, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter. And what happens is they immediately take off for the Batcave. And when they get there, of course, Batman comes out, and it's really this discussion between them, in the sense of Batman basically saying, hey, look, I don't trust you guys anymore. I mean, I never really trusted you guys to begin with, but in terms of what you guys are doing, you've crossed a line that you can't come back from. You guys have crossed this road that you can never return from. Now, further apart, the Justice League's response is, yeah, but you kidnapped Hawkgirl. Are those really the actions of a man that would declare himself to be a hero? And Batman says, yeah, no, whatever, I did what I had to do, and actually flies away. Now, at that point, that's when they realize this is a decoy. This is not Batman, this is Martian Manhunter, and they respond in kind by going after him. The issue with this is that when it comes to the character of Martian Manhunter, what Tom Taylor does is he gives him the respect he finally deserves. He says, hey, look, Martian Manhunter is a guy whose title has been canceled several times. He's a part of the member of the Justice League, but he's always in the background. No one ever thinks about Martian Manhunter. In this conflict, Martian Manhunter addresses that directly, and he says, look, none of you ever took me seriously. None of you guys ever thought I was a serious threat. Not only that, I want to show you, Superman, what it feels like to be powerless. I want to show you what it feels like to be helpless. And he gives Superman a glimpse of his own life when he was on Mars, when they were being usurped by more powerful individuals. He makes Superman relive the moment when he realized that he had killed Lois Lane, the feeling of being helpless. Now, of course, in response to this, Wonder Woman steps in, but Martian Manhunter says again, you guys always underestimated me. I'm intangible. I can become whatever I want to become. I'm a shapeshifter. I can become as hard as Superman, or I can become like water in a cup. And so he basically begins to take on this intangible form, infiltrates Wonder Woman, and in response, Superman uses his heat vision and incinerates, killing, Martian Martian Manhunter. And so again, it's just the deaths piling up. The deaths just continuing to roll in again and again and again, because Tom Taylor is giving us this worst case situation, this worst case scenario. Now from here, things go from, well, they go from bad to worse. It's about as bad of a situation as we could envision it being. And what I mean here is Batman basically calls an emergency meeting with the President of the United States and says, I need a distraction from Superman. I need Superman to look over there so I can move over here without him realizing what it is that I'm doing. And so essentially calling a meeting with his own Justice League, he says, we're going off to the Fortress of Solitude. And the reason why is because this magic pill that Superman's working on is going to serve the purpose of creating a superhuman army. We're going to take it, we're going to synthesize it, we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to give ourselves powers, and we're finally going to bring him down. It's the last battle of the Alamo. It is Batman's best attempt to bring down Superman's reign. And so what happens is the distraction basically comes in the form of the US government moving ships in the direction of Korea. Now the reason why this matters is because, of course, following the Korean War, when you had North and South Korea, the 34th parallel, I think it is, it's always been this contention between the two countries. Moving ships into Korea is basically a sign of aggression, and is putting off the idea that the United States is taking all the pandemonium, all the panic as an excuse to basically invade Korea. Now, of course, the idea here is that Superman would go about, he'd go fly to the ships, he would distract the ships, he'd say, hey, look, you guys got to turn back, all that kind of good stuff. Superman doesn't do that. This is actually Batman's screw up. Batman gambled the wrong direction. Instead, Superman goes directly to the President of the United States and says, you're the person that can get these ships to move them. But the problem with this is that in the middle of Superman's discussion with the President, he realizes that it is a ruse. And the question is, well, why? Why is the President putting ships in Korea? And this is when he realizes that the entire thing was a trick for the purpose of Batman traveling to the Fortress of Solitude. The issue is that once Batman gets there, he realizes how severe of a mistake it is. The mistake that Batman made wasn't traveling to the Fortress of Solitude and breaking into it. The mistake that he made was doing all that with Superman's parents inside. And so immediately Superman's thought is, he's going after my parents. He's going after my parents, he's going to kidnap them, and his goal is going to be to use them against me. And like a bat out of hell, Superman comes flying out of Washington, D.C., and he's at the Fortress of Solitude in the blink of an eye. And this is Batman sitting down and saying, there's no coming back. I mean, there's nothing I can do to rectify this situation. Superman is irrational right now. He was pissed off at me before. He's livid now, and there's nothing I can do to talk him down. There's nothing I can do to make him see reason. Now, the way that Tom Taylor gives himself an out here is by way of Captain Atom. Captain Atom is basically a giant nuclear reactor that walks around. His body literally contains atomic energy, and that's exactly how it is that Tom Taylor plays this. With Superman and Captain Atom going against each other, we have Wonder Woman stepping in, and Wonder Woman slices his throat with her sword, and he says, you're a total moron. Like, inside of me is enough nuclear energy to obliterate the North Pole and everyone on it. And so this is such a cool thing here, because again, if you guys notice, when it comes to these different characters in Tom Taylor's Injustice, that is basically him getting rid of the last of the great superheroes, the selfless superheroes, the superheroes that we think of when we think of traditional good guys, the ones who think of others before themselves. And that's exactly what Captain Atom does. He says, I'm a man that always fought for something greater than myself. Sure, I followed orders, but in the end, it was always doing something, thinking outside of myself. And he even asked Superman that, do you remember the last time that you were selfless? Do you remember the last time that you thought about somebody other than yourself? It's yet another attempt by someone to steer this ship in the right direction, to get Superman to see reason, but he just won't do it. And so in response, Captain Atom flies into outer space because, of course, again, he's unwilling to wipe out the entirety of the North Poles with so many innocent people. The atomic energy erupts with the explosion of, 10 nuclear bombs, and that the belief seems to be that Superman was killed in the blast. Now, of course, we know he's not. We know this is not the case. The problem is that once he races back to the Fortress of Solitude, Wonder Woman is gravely injured to the point that if Captain Atom had actually stayed in the North Pole, Wonder Woman would have died. She would have been killed in the explosion. And so in his anger and in his wrath, Superman looks out and says, it was basically a mission to kill me. That's what Captain Atom said. He was essentially sent by the US government for the purpose of killing Superman. Captain Atom was told, if you have the ability to kill Superman, take him out. And so now Superman looks around and says, it's the world against me. And that's something that I hope you notice, because we'll get to that here in a little while when we have the fight between Superman and Alfred, because it's badass. But it's him continuing to point the finger at everybody else. Now, with regards to the continuation of this, we have basically Oliver Queen, really the only person left in this Fortress of Solitude dude that's standing in Superman's way. The problem with this is Oliver's buying time. And this is beautifully written because Oliver knows that he's gonna die. He knows that there's no way out of this situation. He knows there's no way he can get out of this alive. Instead, the only way that he seems to be able to get past this is to say, hey, look, you know, I can try to complete my mission as best I can. We came here for the purpose of capturing one of these super pills. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. He takes the communicator that Batman had placed on him, he attaches the super pill to it, fires it off on an arrow, and that's it. You know, Black Canary is basically faced with the fact that if this is what he did, then he knows he's gonna die. And this is what Superman does. Superman lashes out. He just keeps pummeling, you know, Green Arrow, and it is so beautiful because while Green Arrow is basically being beat to death, he just keeps thinking of Black Canary. He just keeps thinking of Dinah, and he says, the prettiest girl in the whole damn world. I was so lucky. He died loving the woman of his dreams, and it's a direct contrast to Superman. Superman killed the woman of his dreams. He didn't mean to, but he killed the woman of his dreams. You know, Green Arrow died at the hands of what amounts to a tyrant thinking of the woman of his dreams. Now, of course, we have, you know, Jonathan and Martha Kent stepping in. Of course, Martha took one of the super pills in an effort to basically keep Superman from beating Oliver Queen beyond the point of death. I mean, Oliver Queen's already dead, basically calming him down. But then it's also everybody else just dealing with the fact that he's essentially dead. You know, dealing with the fact that Oliver Queen is gone. Now, this is cool. This is beautifully written because what happens here is with Batman and the rest of his team escaping back to their hideout, Batman's idea is, I'm going to go back to the Batcave and I'm going to synthesize this pill. We're going to find a way to duplicate it so we can use more of them and we can try to take down Superman. The issue with this is that Catwoman's like, if you do that, he's going to look for you there. Like, he's going to be hunting for you over the edge of the world. He'll go wherever he needs to go to find you. That's the first place he'll look. And Batman says, yeah, that may very well be true and I may die, but what'll happen is I'll get this information out there and hopefully somebody can make use of it. The problem with this is that Catwoman loves Batman. She loves Bruce Wayne. It's a man that she'll never get past, and she says, stop playing the role of the hero for just a second. You know, think rationally, be smart. We need to team up on this. It's really her just not willing to accept the fact that Batman's willing to die. And what he does, and this is so beautiful, what he does is he kisses Catwoman, says goodbye, sprays her down with a chemical that knocks her out, you know, and leaves. And that's it. You know, he says, look, you know, if all this works, everybody run, scatter to the hills. If this works, I will find you. We will rally together. We'll bring down Superman. Now, the other half of this is we have really Tom Taylor saying Superman can't be saved. And what I mean by that is it's really, you know, it's Jonathan and Martha Kent talking to their son, but it's also Jor-El talking with his son. Now remember, this is not actually the father of Superman in the well, it is in the literal sense. Again, it's basically this Kryptonian projection. But keep in mind, it's an interactive hologram. It thinks, it feels, it sees, it talks to him with the wisdom of his own father. It's like having his own father there. And Superman, you know, when he says you've murdered, you've defied everything that you were taught to believe. This is not the son that we sent off to the planet Earth, and it's certainly not the man that the Kents raised. The Superman responds by saying, look, I didn't have a choice. I did what I had to do. This is all Batman's fault. Batman allowed the Joker to live time and time again. Batman allowed the Joker to escape time and time again. Batman did not kill the Joker when he could have, and the Joker killed my wife and son. That is the core of this. I mean, that's the core. Everything else is just bravado. Everything else is just glitz and glamour and bright, shiny lights. When it comes down to it, Superman is just a man grieving over the fact that his wife and his unborn child are dead. Joker's the one that did it, and Batman is an easy scapegoat. Batman is the easiest one to point the finger at and say, this is your fault, because Superman cannot bear to face the fact that he flew his wife into space, and he's the reason that she's dead. And so from here, we basically pick up with the tail end of this. We pick up with, you know, with Batman confronting Superman. And the cool thing about this is this entire fight takes place over the time that it takes for Batman to basically to analyze this pill and get the information uploaded and sent out there. But the entire conversation between the two of them is Batman basically saying, you've lost your way, Clark. You've lost everything that you stand for. You've fallen so incredibly far. You are a fraction of your former self. You are nowhere near the man that you espouse to be, the man that you claim to be. You are not a superhero anymore. You're a tyrant. You are a man from another place who shows up here and has decided to tell the world how to live. You are no different than Darkseid. You're killing people who get in your way. You're getting rid of people who get in your way. You're enforcing your own will on society. You are a tyrant. In response, Superman says, that may very well be the case, but I'm not going to let you get in my way anymore. I'm not going to let you be the problem. You know, I'm not going to let you be the one that keeps my world peace from coming to fruition. And so in response, he breaks the back of Batman, completely incapacitates him, and is actually on the verge of killing him. The issue here is that Superman also comes to the realization that Batman had basically duplicated the information inside of this pill and sent it out. Now, of course, we have no idea where it went right now. All we know is that it's just out there somewhere. And Superman's response is, where the hell did you send it? Because who knows who has this information now? Who knows where this information is coming from? The issue is that as he continues to torture Batman, as he continues to punish him, we have Alfred come out of nowhere after taking the super pill and just headbutts the shit out of Superman. It's like the greatest moment ever. Not only that, he stomps him to the point that his shoe explodes. It's one of the coolest things ever because it's like Alfred beating the hell out of Superman while talking to him like a really disappointed father. He's like, I'm so disappointed in you. And this makes sense because Superman is not as close to Alfred as like Batman is, but they're close enough. You know, they're friends. They are family in a lot of different ways. But Alfred's basically cast him out. He says, I, Alfred Pennyworth, cast you out of this family. You're no longer here anymore. You're no longer a part of this. You are a person who's a hassle. You are a person who's getting in the way. You are a tyrant. You stand for everything that Batman fights against, that I fight against. And so with Bruce Wayne having a broken back, with Alfred taking the remnants of these powers, he grabs Bruce Wayne. They essentially leave. And year one ends with Alfred saying, there's nothing left here to save. And it's Superman solidifying his world order by bringing in his own police, bringing in his own soldiers for the purpose of ensuring his ability to take over the world and save it, you know, as he perceives it in his own mind. But if you guys are new here to Comments Explain, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.